Good morning, Southern California. I'm John Baldwin with John Hart Real Estate, and today is February 25th, 2022. Hope you're having a great Friday. Thought I would get into something that I get asked a lot by sellers. What do we do to prep our property for market? What's the best return on investment? I want to go through this article I found on Zillow. Now, some people are of two minds about Zillow, but think of it this way: they have a ton of national housing data and a lot of different surveys and analytics that they can tap into to give us some good data to review. So, all right, let's jump into this article. All right. So, best home improvements to increase value. Now, they're definitely saying, all right, whether you're thinking of selling 6 months or a few years, you want to think about your return on investment. So, definitely, that is something I want to, think about, like, is what I'm doing to my home going to make me money in the future, or is this going to deter buyers or make buyers think, oh, here's money I'm going to have to spend in the future? So, this I thought was interesting. The average seller makes 2.3 renovations or improvements to prepare to sell, and about 79% of sellers make at least one home improvement, while 21% do absolutely nothing and list as is. Now, I think in this market in 2022, if you have a property that needs everything, I wouldn't worry about doing these renovations. Now, the one thing I might recommend, we'll get to a little later, is a quick interior paint job, because it does make even a fixer look like less of a fixer. So you're going to maximize a little bit that way. So that's a judgment call whether the property is too much of a fixer for a quick coat of paint to help it. But we'll get into that a little later. So, Now, I think these numbers are national numbers and not specific to Southern California, because I frankly think, because of the dollar amounts involved in California, I think you're going to recoup more in California than you would in most places around the country. Now, historically, what we've told people, what I've been told since I first got into real estate, is you budget off of a 70% return on investment. So if you're going to be doing it, so you got to think of it that way. The other thing I implore sellers to do renovations as if you were going to live there forever. Meaning you got to do them with quality and craftsmanship, not quick and dirty. Because quick and dirty will frequently lead to I have to undo the upgrade they did to fix it, and then that costs me more money. And that's what I want to avoid. I want to avoid mental dollar signs that the buyer's going to have when they're going through your property and looking, oh, that's going to cost me money, that's going to cost me money, that's going to cost me money, because that's going to impact how much they offer you for your home. So I do think a garage door is a very good idea. How many houses have you been to that the garage door looks tired, it came down on top of a basketball at some point and bent, or somebody backed into it while turning around and you have a nice crease in it? So I do think a garage door replacement is huge, because there's an old statistic, I believe it came from Barbara Corcoran, the New York City real estate lady. She's really good. One of the things she said is that you basically have 1 minute. That's the 30 seconds leading up to the front door and the 30 seconds once you're in the house. So you have 1 minute to convince that buyer. And I think this is true. And so you need to put your best foot forward from the time they open the door of their car and start walking to your front door. Because there's another statistic that I've been hearing since I first got into real estate, is that 90% of buyers know whether they're going to offer on your house before they even walk in the door. And they get inside and confirm it. So, all right. So garage door replacement, I do think is a good idea. Manufactured stone veneer. Now, This one I think is a little specific by saying manufactured stone veneer. What they're talking about is a stacked stone look, very popular, but I do think we are starting to come out of that phase. So depending on the style and depending on your specific neighborhood, whether the stacked stone look is going to be a benefit, you got to talk to your agent. Give me a call, 213-973-3777, and we'll talk about whether this is the right type of veneer to be putting on your house in the current market. We want to see what is selling right now. So another thing I like to do, and this sounds a little crazy, look at Architectural Digest, look at Dwell magazine, look at any of the fancy catalogs and see what they're doing. What are they, because they pay high-end designers to make it so that their stuff is cutting edge. The Pottery Barns, the Ethan Allen, or as I said, Architectural Digest, Dwell magazine. The other thing is to go to these super high-end properties on a Zillow or my website, homesbybaldwin.com, and look at those 5, 6, 7, 10, $20 million properties and see what they're doing. Now, obviously, they're doing the super high end of stuff, but you can, backs, the dollar signs out of that and figure out what you can do for your neighborhood. So, that's one of my little kind of inside tricks right there. Minor kitchen remodel. This one I'm of two minds on, and the reason being is, like, if you can do a quick, like, hey, we've got old tile counters, but if we quick put in quartz or granite or something like that, we can spend a few $1,000s and really update the look of the kitchen with that one minor change. But if you have a kitchen that is the 50s inside and not a usable floor plan, and it's going to be more than your basic replace the counters or paint the cabinets, then it may be a better strategy to leave that for the next person. So let's jump on to the next one. Deck addition. I like decks. I think especially in Southern California, and we live so much outside that a good deck can create a second living room, a second dining room, or an outdoor kitchen. I love outdoor kitchens. So I do think a good deck addition may be a good idea, but you got to measure that of, does our backyard look tired? Will it take up too much space in the backyard? So that you got to make sure you think about that, but also look at what they're saying you can recoup, which is a little less than that 70% number. So you got to look at the cost benefit there and see whether it's going to really add value to your property. And then, and we'll jump on to the next one. Vinyl siding. In Southern California, this is a no-go. Nobody wants vinyl siding in Southern California. I think it's just not in our normal. You don't see vinyl siding a lot in LA. So I would avoid that in LA. In other parts of the country, if this is considered a normal upgrade, then it might be worth doing. But I just think in LA, it would be a detriment. Most people would be like, well, why did you do that? Why didn't you do stucco? Why didn't you do real wood? Something like that, or as the fiber cement we'll get to a little lower. Entry door replacement steel. I do not understand this one, because most of the time, especially with my buyers, we want to see a really nice wood door, maybe a wooden glass door, maybe wood, glass, and wrought iron. But these steel doors are, they're great for a side door, a back door, the door into your garage from the outside. But for a front door, I think really in most neighborhoods in Los Angeles, you're going to want a nice heavy wood door, maybe with a glass window up top. I'd be a little leery of the steel. Same thing, I've seen people put fiberglass front doors on and they just look cheap. And if you're talking about, hey, here's my $900,000 house with a cheap fiberglass front door, I think that's going to do more harm than good. So something to consider there. Window replacement, I think, is clutch. Window replacement is a really good idea, because when a buyer is walking through a house, they're not going to say, oh, replacing all the windows is only going to cost me $19,385. They're going to go, oh, that's costing me $25, $30, $35, $40,000 to do all these windows. So the buyer's mental dollar signs are going to be a lot higher than the reality. So I think in LA you can actually recoup more than the 68.6%. I actually think you get a pretty good pop out of window replacement, because especially around LA, we've got a lot of the old aluminum 60s single pane windows still all over the place. A lot of those post-war louvered windows that just bleed heating and air conditioning inside and out. So just one of those that's something that I do think window replacement's probably a good idea. And then they're going to have window replacement with wood down below. Depending on your neighborhood, you might go with vinyl for a more cost effective, but if you're in a little more high end neighborhood, wood's the way to go, hands down. So, don't put a vinyl replacement window in a $3 million house. So, siding replacement, fiber cement. This stuff is pretty cool. I've seen it in some what we call small lot subdivisions in LA. These are where you have basically like they're technically single family homes, but they kind of work like townhouses but they're detached because they have a 6-inch air gap between the units, so they're not technically touching. So that's why they're called small lot developments. And I've seen a lot of this fiber cement. It can look really cool. I've seen them yellow and green or gray. So they can have a lot of style to them, especially if you're in a little more industrial style. It can look very cool. Window replacement wood. Now it's going to cost a little bit more, but wood over vinyl if you're in that type of neighborhood, hands down. And then they get into the composite decks. Composite decks are like those tracks, ground up milk jugs and stuff like that. Can be very cool. I would just, look at what's going on in your neighborhood, whether your neighbors also have composite or whether they're going wood. So that's just a judgment call and what style and look you're going for. But here's where I'm Dutch and Scottish. I like saving money, so I don't want to spend money unnecessarily. So I like the low cost stuff. New interior paint, I think, is probably the number one thing I would recommend for most sellers. Because over time you get, dust on the walls or fingerprints and things just sort of look a little dingy. So a nice coat of paint to really make it pop, especially if you have a house that needs some updating. If you give it that fresh coat of paint, it will feel like there's less updating that needs to be done because it'll feel cleaner and crisper and brighter. So definitely something to consider. And then they get into some things. I think where the beige sort of Pottery Barn earth tone palette was definitely like the 2000s. In the 2010 to 2020, we were definitely in that blue-gray palette. The blue-gray palette was very cool. I frankly think we're coming out of that into a new color palette. I'm not quite sure what it is yet, but I'm seeing a lot more stark white, sort of high contrast may be the way I'm looking at it, because you have like white walls with a blue accent wall that is a very pretty blue that pops and give it its good contrast. So stuff like that, and you can get a little bit more into the color analysis, but I think we're getting very bright white walls and the return of some color, which would be nice. So. But definitely something to consider. And look at what's going on. Again, go to the magazines, Dwell Magazine, Architectural Digest, any of the furniture magazines where they have high-end designers staging those photographs. Look at the walls. Look what they're doing. So that's one of the ways to cheat a little bit. And then also look at the extremely high-end homes and see what they're doing, because those builders and designers pay a lot of money to make sure that their color schemes and furnishings and all their staging materials are cutting edge. So I think, look at those 10 and $20 million properties and see what they're doing. So curb appeal, as I mentioned before, most people know before they even cross your threshold into your house whether they're going to make an offer, and they need to confirm it by what they find inside. So we definitely have a trend where we have a lot of I'm going to go into, it's going to be the high contrast, because I'm seeing a lot of houses that are being painted black on the outside, and then we'll have like a mid-century modern orange front door or even a black front door and then be bright white inside. Yellow metals are making a comeback. Brushed gold fixtures and handle pulls, things like that. So definitely something to consider. But I do think a fresh coat of paint inside or out is definitely a good idea. Smart technology is definitely, it gives us buzzwords to market on. So Nest thermostat, Ecobee thermostat, or anything like that. There are some houses being built around the corner for me that are going to be fully smart home. All everything, light switches, light fixtures, switches, heating and air conditioning. Everything's going to be hooked into a central server. So definitely something to think about. And then this is one that I don't recommend people spend a ton of money on like super fancy chandeliers or something like that. If you have a great chandelier, awesome. But I'm thinking more of your smaller light fixtures throughout the house. The dome lights in the center of your bedroom, the can lights throughout the house, the little sconces, that kind of thing. If you can upgrade those so that they're more current era, modern, and not stuck in 1978 or just tired looking, it will get you more bang for your buck than say dropping $4,000 on a fancy chandelier for your dining room, because that chandelier may not be the style the next person likes. So there are times when a chandelier is a really good idea, like a front entryway with a really good chandelier can be a great idea. Again, it's a judgment call, and I'm talking about what are the smaller things you can do. But there are times, especially if you have a very grand entryway, that a good light fixture can really make a difference. So small bathroom updates. Again, we're talking about the vanity lights and the little lights throughout the house. Recaulking, absolutely. Cleaning all your grout. Get the the Clorox cleanup stuff. That stuff's amazing. Make your grout all white and pretty again. Or if you've got the dark grout, clean it and make it so it looks all perfect. I'm not a fan of reglazing tubs. It may be strategically a good idea if your tub looks really tired and nasty, or if it's been previously reglazed and you just need to kind of clean up, because reglazing a tub is what I call punting for 2 to 3 years, because that tub eventually, that reglazing is going to start peeling, and usually it's about 2 to 3 years down the line. So definitely something to consider. Same thing with upgrade faucets, towel racks, toilet paper holders, things like that. Those are not huge expenses, but they can really dramatically change the look of a bathroom, especially a small bath. And then my number one thing outside of paint is going to be flooring, because that is usually people's biggest expense inside. If you've got old carpet that really, really looks rough, it'd probably be a good idea to replace it. But if it's just sort of a little dingy, then definitely get it deep cleaned. If you can clean or refinish the hardwoods, do that. But the other thing we're seeing a lot of right now is luxury plank vinyl, because it has the look of real wood, but it's a lot, it's virtually indestructible, and it installs a lot more like laminate flooring. So definitely something to consider. And then Zillow even mentions herringbone floors. I just sold a house in Silver Lake with herringbone floors, and they looked amazing. So definitely something to consider. Something like that. But that's a bigger expense. You gotta, again, it's a judgment call, but it's definitely something to consider. Swimming pools. If you have a pool already and the plaster is in rough condition, then I would probably recommend factoring that in, because for most pools, replastering that pool is going to be roughly $10,000. And so if a buyer is going to walk through and they're going to see pool plaster, they're going to offer you less, because there's another item on their expense list for the future. Oh, I'm going to have to do the pool in a couple years. That's going to be $10,000. So they may offer you $10,000 less. Just something to consider. Luxury upgrades, you got to look at your neighborhood, look what's going on in your area. If you're in a neighborhood where everybody has a super fancy kitchen with all the, commercial or, really high-end Viking appliances and stuff, then that's something that you need to consider for yours. But if you're in a more, normal, non-luxury neighborhood, then putting in a Viking range may be just, overboard. So definitely something to think of, like, what is your market? Are you in a luxury market, a high-end market? And where are you, and what sort of upgrades do you need to do? Landscaping is the same thing, but I would recommend some color, and that can be as simple as going to your local greenhouse and picking up some flowers and just putting some color out front and making it so that there's a little bit of that contrast I've been talking about. And then the other thing I would definitely recommend is going through and taking care of any little repair you can. One thing I mentioned in a couple of videos is go to your Home Depot, your Lowe's, or whatever, and pick up a box of light switch covers and outlet covers and replace them, because they frequently, the plastic will look old, or they'll have fingerprints, or they get cracked. Or broken because you're running into the house, you slam on a light fixture and you hit it a little hard, and boom, it cracks because it's plastic. So it's something to consider, and those are usually 65 cents to a couple bucks. So you're not talking about a huge expense, but it's something that every home inspector will note: a cracked switch plate or a broken outlet cover. So if we can take anything like that off that repair list, it's just going to help you in the long run. So and then any broken mechanicals, if your heating and air conditioning is broken, that is something that a home inspector is going to call out. Peeling wallpaper, if you can glue it back down so that it looks good, then great. If not, consider removing it and just doing a basic repaint of that room with just maybe white or whatever color that room is. So weeds and basic landscaping, what I like to say is make it look intentional. Get the weeds out, do the edging, make it look clean, like this is how we intended it to look. Now that's the word, intentional. Repair broken and leaky plumbing. Like, everybody, frequently will have like, oh, that one faucet that dribbles a little bit, or, stuff like that. Or that bathroom sink has a very slow drip underneath. So you put a cup under there or something. Well, fix those. Get out ahead of that repair request. Get out ahead of that home inspector coming through and putting those all on his list. Cracked tiles is another one. If you have the tile, if you can replace the tile with the same tile and it won't look like, wow, this is 10 years newer than that tile and looks really out of place, then I would consider replacing some broken tiles and things like that. Or, if you get, if it's really bad, you might just retile that whole section or whatever it is. So definitely something. So I think that's about it. They get into some financing on for the home improvements after that. But definitely something to consider. If you have any questions, I'm really good at walking through a house and just kind of pointing out what a home inspector is going to call out. Also, I'll point out what I'm going to point out to a buyer, like, hey, this carpet, this is going to cost you this much money. This flooring, it's going to cost you this much money. And these are things that you need to think about, is like, how do you walk through your house with the eyes of a buyer, not your eyes that have lived in the property for however many years. So let's have that seller consult. Give me a call, 213-973-3777, and let's get your house sold.